Welcome to Best Laid Plans of Mice and Jen, a podcast covering all the plans a homeschooling mom makes and how they end up somewhat successful. From homeschooling to motherhood to just surviving and thriving in life. Join me, your host, as I take a humorous look at ordinary situations to find the serious business of living a satisfying and fulfilling life. Even after all the years of homeschooling, I sometimes need to rediscover why I homeschool. It's usually after a tough day or a day where I see holes in the education and I think, oh, you should know this by now. And why haven't I taught you that yet? But it always comes back to the basics. I am called to homeschool, even when I don't feel like it's a calling, and even when I want to say wrong number when answering that call. The other basic reason to homeschool is right now, have you seen how ugly and depraved things are in this world? And how it's those things right now are directly targeting our children. So I say, okay, fine. I'm called and this world is a mess. Well, now what? How in heaven's name do I tackle this enormous and important burden of raising and teaching my children godly ways in such a wicked and perverse generation? A few weeks back, I said to my husband, I need some reassurance that we are doing right by our children. And so he gave me an answer that truly helped pull me out of my existential funk. This whole question of, or this whole feeling of, I want to be in control of all outcomes and it's too much right now, so I think I'm a loser and maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And his answer to me was, who knows? Who knows? Thanks. Thanks. You may find that to be a flippant or dismissive answer, but my husband is neither. His two-word answer made me realize my limitations and the essential need to completely trust in the Lord. I realize that the only thing that we can know is God. I can't know the outcomes, but I can know God. And in knowing God, I can know Jesus, His word that gives us the guidance in how we should live. And I can know the Holy Spirit who gives us wisdom and power to live this life with the fruits of the Spirit. And I can know rest. And I can rest in my Father who made it all possible. And so can you. I know I'm trying hard to do right by my children, and I know you are too. And the Lord knows your heart. And He promises that if we don't grow weary in doing good, we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Of course, it's in due season, and sometimes I wish the season would hurry up, and that season of fruitfulness we could see right away, but that's not how that works. But I am weary, you say. I say, I am weary. And of course we are, especially if we are trying to do this in our own strength. So what does Jesus say? He says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Ugh. But I want to be in control of all the outcomes. I am too important to step back and let God be in control. Okay, did I just say that out loud? I am too important to step back and let God be in control? Well, as the kids say these days, that sounds like a you problem. And it's definitely a me problem. And it's a problem because my desire to control all outcomes goes against how the Lord has designed my relationship to work with Him. Psalms 37, 3 and 4 says this, trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord and He will give you the desires of your heart. So controlling outcomes has nothing to do with me except surrendering to Him. And if I try to control it, not only is it impossible, but it's self-defeating because most of the outcomes have absolutely nothing to do with me. So what is the desire of my heart? Well, it's to do right by my children. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, by not becoming weary in doing good. Okay, but what do I do when I do become weary? Not if I become weary, but when I do become weary. Well, we rest at the feet of Jesus, just like Mary did. And we stop being Martha and we rest in His presence. You can look at Luke chapter 10 for that story, starting around verse 38. And as we rest in Him, He will lead and guide us with our children. And so, my friends, I want to encourage you that the Lord sees you and he sees your efforts, but he still says, come and rest. And we can rest in him and leave the outcomes in his hands. I know he loves my children more than I could ever love my children. And I'm so thankful that I can trust in such a good and merciful God who, in the midst of this crazy and perverse generation, gives us this hope that we can have in him. And we surrender our children to the Lord, and we do our best, and we don't become weary in doing good, because he gives us the strength each day to get through it. Thanks for listening to this episode of Best Laid Plans of Mice and Jen. You can find me on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow me on Instagram at Best Laid Plans of Mice and Jen. If you have any questions or topic ideas for future episodes, you can send them to bestlaidplansofmiceandjen@gmail.com. And remember, even when things don't go as planned, it still leads to some of the best learning and growing.